The hands, good. So let me give you a bit of clarification so we can dive right in. This film is not exactly cleanly explained at the end. This film is a film of a show that Larson created and performed off-Broadway before Rent hit Broadway. So it's his own story before he took up writing Rent again, and it became a hit. What you saw, the performance space with the brick wall and the singers and the band in front and him at the piano, that's the show. All the other stuff was what the filmmakers did to open up the songs and the story to other locations and enrich the other people, especially the characters of Michael and Susan, to become real breathing human beings so that you had a better feel for his life and the pressures he was under. And I think it's a real testament to his filmmaking abilities. Who knew? But I looked at the credits of the people who helped him with this film. How many saw In the Heights, the recent release? All right. So yes. That was directed by John Chu, who did Crazy Rich Asians. And the cinematographer for this film was the same as the one on Crazy Rich Asians. And one of the two editors was the same as on Crazy Rich Asians. You get a theme here. Lin-Manuel did not direct his own musical, In the Heights, but obviously he was very close to Jonathan Chu and said, what should I do? They're going to allow me to shoot this. And he said, use my people, they're great. And I think this is a really visually inventive film. It deepened the performances and our sense of characters so much by the live action or the non-performance stuff, which carried some of the original songs. Choreography was great. This guy could conduct as the director such an accomplished film. I was very impressed. So that said, are we all clear on what we saw? That none of the live action stuff outside of the performance space was in the original musical. The swimming, the apartment, even the showcase, the musical showcase, the rooftops. And if you see it a second time, it's really worth.
Jim, you're
considering that, because you see all the richness that was baked into this film. Okay, that's what my wife says.
You keep freezing.
But that's another story. I do have shaky. I know the joke was delayed too. I do have an issue, and I've got to get somebody here to straighten this out. I don't have any opening questions. I hardly made any notes for this film. It just blazed through all the scenes for me. But let's start with Susie. Go ahead, Susie. Unmute yourself. Everybody's muted.
Okay.
Susie, unmute.
Can you tell us a little bit about the actor that played Jonathan? He was so good. The actor.
He was Spider-Man in at least 2 of the 3 sequels.
No, I haven't seen that.
He was Spider-Man. Can you? Really? I'm surprised. It was a big hit among teenagers and preteens. Spider-Man, it's like this, Marvel comic superhero. What?
I said he is so talented with the piano and his voice.
He is.
He studied, I read, for a year. He studied singing for a year once he was cast for this role.
Really?
He was not a real singer beforehand.
Well, it just goes to show that performance is everything.
Yeah.
Steve Greenberg has some information for us, I'm sure. Steve?
Yeah, he's a British actor, which surprised me. And it helps. I Google the film either before or after I watch it. And it's interesting to get a lot of information. For example, in the workshop, they had a whole, the Sunday morning song. They had an incredible number of real celebrities. Bebe Neuwirth was in there. I didn't see her. Bradley Whitford played Stephen Sondheim in the other scenes, but there were real celebrities in that Sunday morning thing that I wouldn't have known about unless I hadn't Googled it. So
We're having
Well,
fun.
you're not a branded Broadway maven. My wife translated. There was Bernadette Peters,
Yes.
not Rita Moreno, but the other one. I forget her name. And the black
Peter
actor
Rivera.
was
Patty
well known. I
LaBone.
forget. He has a 3-word name. Peter Rivera, right? Right. These are
Oh,
all
Peter
like
Rivera,
icons in Broadway musicals. All of them. Oh, Martin Short was there. Was the short little guy who couldn't get his check, when he kept asking.
Yeah.
And in
For
the
it.
diner, a Broadway
It's a very
actor
cool
whose
number.
name I can't recall.
There were a lot of them. I don't know them by face. I just know that they look or sound familiar. Now, interestingly, this number, and you can thank my wife for this, is it's called Sunday, and it's kind of a spoof on Sundays in the Park with George,
Right.
which is a similar musical because it's about the artist's inability to love and to tell this woman whom he's living with that she's important to him. So there are all kinds of parallels between that musical and this, especially that scene. And I didn't know that when I first saw it, but it makes total sense. And there's some musical phrases, especially the opening, that are repeated from Sun. It's the opening song in Sundays in the Park. Yeah, Sunday. Now, I don't know about you, but when the front wall folds down and they dance out into the street, it's a spectacular number. I don't know how they did it. The diner was a location, but that scene, it's a combination of sets and visual effects. It's just remarkable and very clever because they're all coming out of the diner onto the street with him. Very inventive, and there were just a lot of smart people who loved this material and responded. Howard?
Jim, speaking of the diner, I really felt I didn't know anything about the movie, and I really was very unimpressed with it at first. And the diner scene suddenly made it for me. It was a huge transition. It was really
Why? Why did that turn you in favor of the film?
the music.
But that's pretty deep into the film. You didn't care for the music up to that point?
No, but what do I know?
Well, you know what you like, and that's the point. You're allowed your opinion.
I just felt it was a huge transition of the film because
It is a big moment. It is. It's sort of his acceptance. And there's another song later, maybe I can find it in my notes, where it's his song to Michael, the ex-roommate, about I'm making a commitment to this musical thing and being embraced by all these. I mean, the hidden agenda is being embraced by all these great Broadway actors. Of course, it's going to give him a boost. So a very positive number. Anybody else want to chime in at this point? Okay, so the film is it's a traditional story. First, we meet John, and then his roommate Michael, and then Susan. John has his birthday party, or his song about his birthday, rather, and his anxieties. So that's his introduction. And then Susan has her dance performance, after which she breaks, sometime after which she breaks her ankle, and that's why she has to teach and can't perform much anymore. And her going away to teach is a big part of the plot. And then we're off and running. After that performance of hers, there's that big party scene, which is a lot like Rent. Those of you who haven't seen it, it's a bunch of supposed bohemian people during the AIDS epidemic and how it affected them. I am told that I saw an unfortunate performance here in LA, which was not good, at the Amundsen, but that it's a fabulous musical. I didn't feel that at all when I saw it because it was very narrow. I thought this was much broader because it took on the issues of creativity. It's just, in a way, it's just as political. The AIDS is a theme with Michael, and that lovely news clip from Jesse Helms sort of points the finger at, these idiots who were in power at the time and supported Reagan from not acknowledging the crisis. And then, there's that song in the party. It's Bohemia, Bo, Bo, Bo. And they're all dancing around, these joyous, poor, starving actors. And of course, Rent is based on La Boheme, which is, about artists down on their luck and their life together. So he's quoting that other musical as well. And then there's the rooftop scene with her, and it's clear that they are an item. For those of you who didn't know, Jonathan Larson died of AIDS the day before Rent opened on Broadway. And
He actually didn't die of AIDS.
Not
AIDS.
An aneurysm.
Aneurysm.
and I'm sorry, where do you think the aneurysm came from? He was 35 years old.
No, he had a
He did not have AIDS. He had
Aneurysms don't come from AIDS.
Michael had AIDS.
Well,
It's-
I could accept that I'm wrong. Yes, Michael had AIDS. But as I recall, the press at the time when it was released it was so sad because he died from the thing he was writing about. I'm willing to stand corrected on that, but that was the assumption I carried with me for over 10 years. At any rate, the film is very political, and it acknowledges that. But what creative person in their right mind couldn't get political about the AIDS crisis? What compassionate person? You know, a lot didn't. But that rooftop scene where she tells him she's got this job. First, she doesn't say she got an offer, and then she does. And then they dive into bed, and he doesn't know how to answer her, whether he's going to go or not. And that's sort of where he's stuck. That's his scene of stasis. You know, it cuts to him in the car with Michael, and he's paraphrasing their conversation. And, you know, Michael is like this Greek chorus of conscience who sees the truth in what his friend Jonathan is doing. And I found him a terrific performer with a great arc to his character, providing lots of wisdom and pain, which he fully accepts. And that while Jonathan can accept his own pain, he doesn't really see much beyond it, including the pain that his recalcitrance may be causing Susan, his girlfriend. You know, I don't want to jump ahead to their big scene, the breakup scene. But then there's the brunch scene, you know, like the ladies who lunch and all the other actors. It's a great, I guess you could call that a show-stopping number. And then we get to the point where his friend Freddie is announced that his T-cell count is down. It was revealed earlier in the party scene, and now he's in the hospital. So this is another reminder that, oh my God, there's a life outside musicals that's real. And there's a song that Michael sings later about, is this real life? And I think the Jewish message, the Menschy message is, you don't know what real life is until disaster hits you. Unfortunately, we all take the good times for granted, but real life is when it's undeniably painful. And you know, we embrace the joy, but we can easily run from the pain by denying it or pretending it's not there. And when you had an HIV diagnosis in 1990, it was a death sentence. And so he's bringing this heavy dose of reality very soulfully to us. And he doesn't even have the courage to tell. There's that lovely moment where you know, Michael, I guess it's after the music workshop, we'll come back to that, but he barges in, he says, oh, my world's falling apart. Nobody called after the workshop. And at the end of that scene, he blurts out, I'm HIV positive. And Michael, you know, often when people are confronted with a horrible truth, they flee, they leave the scene, which he does, because he can't bear to face it. But that's when he plays the piano and it begins to rain in the park. And he realizes that's his song about commitment to Michael, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then he goes back to Michael and he's soaked, and Michael takes him in, and it's okay between them again. So there's a nice mini arc there where he doesn't ignore his friends, but he still can't let Susan into his life. You know, obviously it's a recurring problem throughout because he never does. Yeah, that happened after the argument with Michael on the street. Remember, and he accuses Michael of, you abandon your art. You know, you chose to opt for the money. A lot of us here know what that means, and they just can't talk to each other anymore. But that happens before the announcement that he's HIV positive, and that's one of the scenes where Michael might have told him. He says, he intimates, he said, I'm going to enjoy things while I have the time, but he doesn't go farther than that. So it's a slow buildup, but Michael is this constant reminder of the pain of life and the seriousness of things. And you got to get out of yourself to really see what's important. And Jonathan is not doing that. The swimming, I want to talk about the swimming pool scene before maybe somebody discovered this. They didn't know when they wrote the swimming pool scene that Andrew Garfield was a swimmer, and they hired a stunt double to do it. And it turned out he was better than the stunt double. So they had him do all those scenes in the pool. But that's a magical pool scene because the whole film turns on that. When he's finally underwater and he rubs his hands on the tiles, what happens? Anybody remember that?
He finally write the song that he's been struggling with, the main song that we're missing, and you see all the musical notes that just roll out, as it were, at the bottom of the.
He has a vision. I don't think he actually wrote it, but his hand smears and the tile numbers, I think it's 40 or 30, sort of disappear in smoke, and was revealed the treble clef, and then all the lanes turn into musical notes. And that's his realization. He runs back to his apartment and he writes the song. This is the before the showcase. Steve Greenberg, did you have something to add? Find your mute button, Steve.
Okay.
There you go.
Two things again from Google. The stunt swimmer that you mentioned said that he couldn't swim as fast as the actor. And they discovered that the pool they were using, that they found as a location, was the actual one that the author
he used.
Swim at.
What he did to calm himself down, Larson himself, was to swim. So it was part of his own self-treatment.
If you visualize a swimming pool and the lanes in a pool, it's like the musical paper, that has the different
the notes, the lines for the notes.
The lines, on a musical paper.
So it's like, I don't know who thought that up, but that's another example of the visual brilliance and richness of this film. And it's not just a gimmick, because it's the latchkey to the whole movie. It gives, he can complete the song and run in there the next morning, and he gives it to her to improvise, to sight read. And it's a huge hit. That's where the applause comes in. And I think that's the last scene in the showcase. And then we go into the Judith Light. Are people fans of Judith Light? Anybody? Yeah. Very well established. She still works occasionally. She's an icon on Broadway. And I think she was just in some big television event too. I can't recall. And she gives this incredible performance of the agent. What?
She did the television show Transparent with Jeffrey Tambor.
Yeah. And other things, right. But what an incredible, there are lots of cliched performances of Hollywood or Broadway agents. And as much as she hewed very closely to the cliche, that's how it was written, she's got this heart of gold, and she delivers the key message to write what you know. But the other key message is all you can do is go back and do it again, as painful as that is. And I think that's when he runs to Michael and says, I can't do it anymore. And then he realizes through that Michael's is the news that he has to do it, because he makes that commitment to Michael to stay in the game. My notes end there in the park. So I guess our discussion's over. You people are, I just found this so charming. And I actually stopped taking detailed notes because every scene resonated. Brad?
Well, I actually thought the one scene that gave me the most to think about was sort of the breakup scene, where the culmination of the scene is when he starts tapping on her shoulder, and she realizes that she's just become material for a song.
Right.
And that made me think about how difficult it must be to be in a relationship with an artist, where you are at the same time a subject and also an object. You are the material. You are frequently the material for the artist's production. And how difficult a relationship that must be to be in a relationship with an artist.
And he chooses in that moment not to be in the relationship anymore.
I think children of artists must feel, like that quite a bit. Children of writers.
Geniuses of any kind, people who, extreme savants, Stephen Jobs or Elon Musk, these are not model parents. And despite their brilliance, it's hard to find the space in your own brain, not just ego, to be vulnerable and to share with somebody else. And in a way, that's why we hire actors, is to do it for us, to remind us of what real human feelings are, even when we're stuck or stalled. Now, the hardest thing is to illustrate somebody in stasis, somebody who can't get off the dime. But Michael, Alcove?
I think Cindy was next, and then Michael.
Okay.
Then Michael.
Yeah, I just looked up his death, and the aneurysm was caused by an undiagnosed Marfan syndrome. And
what is that?
Marfan's disease used to always be fatal. Usually they died before the age of 45. It's inherited, and it's a cardiac death. Cardiac death in an athlete.
Yeah. Oh, the runners who die in their 40s because
maybe his swimming did it.
Their fathers died younger.
Yeah.
Yes, I've heard of that. So thank you.
It was very unlikely related to AIDS.
Well,
Michael?
I think this being the week of that Stephen Sondheim passed away, I think it was sort of a tribute to him too, because of the relationship he had with his students in trying to develop other individuals in the same field of musical. And I thought that was more than just a coincidence. It was
well, it was a big part of his life, and Sondheim did teach a lot. Terry Gross on NPR is running a bunch of her old interviews with Sondheim, and he talks about speaking to the music department at Penn. And this guy, he had a gift, just a gift, and he knew what he did, and he knew why and how, and sharing it was just part of enjoying the gift. So, who in 1990 didn't know who Stephen Sondheim was in musical theater? I think Brad had something, then Steve Greenberg.
I think Steve Greenberg, and then Brad.
Yeah.
Art, did you have your hand up too?
A more fun fact. Stephen Larson had written to Stephen Sondheim years before he was even writing anything, and Sondheim kind of became a mentor well before that first workshop that Sondheim attended in the film. And when Sondheim leaves that phone message for him, the voicemail at the end on the phone, Bradley Whitford had recorded one who was the actor playing Sondheim in the movie, but they couldn't use it, and he wasn't available to re-record it. So that was actually Sondheim's real voice on the phone machine at the end.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how well put it was, it's just so carefully wrought.
A couple of other things about art imitating reality. They had notes about his best friend was not named Michael. I think it was Henry something. And they had been friends in summer camp, but they never actually roomed together. His relationship with Susan did continue on again and off again until he died. They didn't just break up in part. So these again were dramatic inventions.
Yeah. But that was the whole point, that he missed out. Who's next, Fern?
Brad, and then Arlene.
Well, Jim, I want to come back to that creativity issue because I'm not sure that the Steve Jobs analogy is the one that I would use. Because I think what's at issue here is the fact that when you are in a relationship with an artist, you are potentially material for that artist. And I think that inevitably has to create some kind of barrier between you and that artist, for fear that you will become that material. So it just made me so aware of how difficult that kind of relationship has to be. And of course, artists thrive on their contacts with other people. And yet people inevitably are going to be guarded in their relationships with them.
It's a great observation, Brad, and I want to add to it. She was an artist too, yet she found the brain space for him. So some artists are human beings too. Like I say, Jews are also people. Artists can be people. It's just most of them are not. I wrote
Arlene wanted to say something, and I'd like to say something as well.
Okay.
Arlene, you're muted.
Lower left, Arlene. Go to the left. You know where that is.
Yeah.
It's comfortable.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it is such a wonderful film on so many levels. As a theater lover, as Arthur and I both grew up going to Broadway and off Broadway. We saw Rent, we saw In the Heights, we saw the current stuff, except for the last 2 years. And Lin-Miranda did a fabulous job of directing this film. I felt, because it had so many levels of theater in it. You have to be, if you're not already a theater buff or a musical theater buff, this film has to make you one. It shows you so many of the trials and tribulations that the actors have to go through, the performers have to go through. It was so beautifully done. I found it very, very inspiring. And I think Manuel Miranda did not, I don't think he's ever directed anything in film as wonderful as this film is.
I think you have. The interesting, Arthur, go ahead, Arthur, and I'll chime in after.
I was just going to say, and it spoke directly to a younger generation, especially in that last song, challenging them to make something of your life. This is the time for revolution. Don't be satisfied with your leadership if you're unhappy with them. It really would speak to this generation, this younger generation.
It did before that, because look who's in the cast. These are all 20-somethings, you know, and that's the wonderful thing about great theater is that it's their heritage. I mean, those of us who are of a certain age say, when will the 20 and 30-somethings get it, you know, and recognize the situation we're in now, you know, with our society as being so divisive and painful and destructive. I want to say, to chime in off what Arlene said, yes, it was all about the life of the artist of the theater. It did it in song, though. This time I watched it with the subtitles on, so I could read all the lyrics. And if you ever see it again, do so. It directly addresses the plot. These songs are about what's going on in his life. And so, of course, he's going to tap out a melody on her shoulder. But it's extremely persuasive when the lyrics and the music move you to the same place and it's relevant to the plot. I mean, this is like Sondheim. where his songs are about what's going on. It's not just, oh, hey, Judy, let's put on a show. It's, hey, let's do something meaningful that will connect people with themselves.
And of course, those of us who've seen Rent could see precisely the roots of Rent in what he was experiencing during his life.
Sure, it was the life of the theater at that time. People were dying left and
the
right.
AIDS crisis and the relative poverty, everything that Rent came to be about.
And as I said,
write what you know. That's exactly what he did.
What he knew. So he was writing about what he knew before he knew it. I guess it's very autobiographical.
Yeah.
And but now he has to do something else. So this is the challenge at the end. Fern, you had a comment?
Yeah, for me, I have a son who, when he graduated from Northwestern in theater, wrote a play and a musical with a group of people, and that play ran off Broadway, and I had the experience of watching him put his soul and on the line, as all artists who are really artists do. They're not just doing work, they're telling you what's inside them, who they are, and then they're asking you to approve of it. It's very hard. So as much as Brad felt, was feeling for the family of them, I was feeling for the artists themselves, how difficult it is to put yourself in front of strangers who then comment and say, oh, I didn't like that. That wasn't that interesting or whatever. And so I was very struck by that. I was very moved by it. And I identified with a lot of the experience. It ran off Broadway until 9/11 came and shut it all down. But that he went on, he runs a theater, a children's arts and literacy program now, but the experience of being somebody who does musical theater, this film was magnificently showed how difficult it is, and how difficult it is to keep on going, to do a play, and then somebody says, yeah, that was really good, but nobody's going to buy it. Tomorrow, write another one, put another 8 years of your life into writing another one. And this guy wrote another one, and that one wasn't successful. It wasn't until Rent, and then his life was over. So I thought it was extremely poignant and a wonderful description of what it's like to live in that particular world. And the other theme that I thought was very poignant is the fact that our lives are on loan, and we have no idea when they'll be over, even if you're 29 years old or 30 years old. And we have to do what we can do, because tomorrow is not promised to anybody.
Fern, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, I'm sure you went to the opening off Broadway of your son's play.
I did.
Can you possibly express in words what you felt?
What every Jewish mama feels when their kid is doing great. It's the fell factor. A lot of friends came and watched. Arlene and Arthur were there, and it's a thrilling experience. You can still buy it on Amazon. It's called I Sing. And but it was interesting because it was about young people and what it's like to just grow up and try and make your way in a strange world. It's probably a little outdated now, but it was a wonderful musical, and it's very thrilling, but it's really difficult. The Schwimmers can surely, identify with what it is to put yourself out on the line and say, here, this is my work and this is my soul. Do you like it?
Howard, and then Rosalind.
I just wanted to bring up, so in the context that this is a Jewish film festival, and the principal character who died is Jewish, but there's virtually no mention of that, and he's portrayed as somebody who doesn't have any Jewish contacts or friends.
Well, he was busy. You're right. There is a mention in the scene when he's running through the tunnel.
Yeah.
I'm tired of seeing my friends say friend's family say Kaddish for them.
Right.
That's the one I picked up. There may be another.
I didn't know it was
The
the only
only
one.
one who pronounced challah properly. In the
All right.
belly.
Not a pronounced challah.
Um,
It didn't seem to have any relevance, the fact that he was Jewish, and yet don't we all think that maybe the fact that he was Jewish had something to do with it?
Yes. I think it often, don't you think, Howard, or everybody, that a lot of Hollywood portrays Jewish stuff, Jewish people, Jewish themes, but doesn't mention they're Jews.
Right.
Well, it's a matter of your connection to the Jewishness. And I think people like me have discovered how you can connect when you never thought you could. And I found it through films that are moving and connect me with my inner mensch, forgive me, I don't call it Jewishness, but it certainly feels that way sometimes. And my familiarity with Judaism helps me get these films or other films more deeply. Yeah, Brad? Oh, wait, Rosalind.
Well, I think it.
Brad, let Rosalind go.
Roz?
Okay. I come from a musical background family. I'm not musical. I missed it. But my nieces and nephews are out there. They're young and they're producing, and they have a new show on HBO. It's not a good show for any of us. It's too raunchy. It's really R. But my niece has said to me, and she has her own little record company, and she's done very well. Aunt Roz, I'm so used to rejection. Don't worry about me. This is what I do. And hopefully things work out. But if they don't, I move on. And she was pretty young when she said that. Her career is doing very well now.
And what do you think prepared, Roz, what do you think prepared her for that frame of mind?
Well, I think her father influenced her because he has a position in the music world, music business. And he probably said, keep going, keep trying. That's sort of the motto for the family too. And my nephew is a drummer with, big bands and so forth. And then another niece is writing for Netflix. And she too says, I don't know if they're going to accept it. So I'm living it now with them and through them. And it's kind of exciting. We'll see.
And you are married to a writer, aren't you?
Here he is. He writes. He writes. That's what he does. But he doesn't write about.
I don't use her.
So,
well, you should probably be flattered if you did occasionally. I think, Melissa, you waved your hand, or were you just saying hi? Well, Melissa, this is about your...
Hold on, before you turn away, I think Brad had a comment, and then we'll go back to you.
I just wanted to respond to Howard. Howard, I play piano. In particular, I play the American Songbook, which is all the show tunes that we all love. And, aside from Cole Porter, all of those composers were Jewish.
Yeah, there was
It's absolutely amazing. So it's just, to me, it was just a given. The Jewish aspect is a given because we've been such an integral part of that musical tradition.
There was a CNN documentary about the American musicals, and it made the exact same comment that everybody except for Cole Porter was Jewish.
Right.
Well, remember, the Jewish tradition was not to own land in Europe. So things of the mind became an avenue that was available to them for self-expression and success. Look, there are writers and singers and composers in every culture. Music is part of no one culture can lay claim to music. And certainly in American classical music, there were plenty of Jewish composers there too. Aaron Copland, I think, and Bernstein. Oh my God, really important composers, but there were many of others. Gershwin, both of them. I think. What?
Phillip Glass.
Phillip Glass.
Phillip Glass, and some wouldn't call him a composer, but just making a joke, Howard. Okay. And Oscar Hammerstein, and you know, it's like I don't do Nobel Prize counts. You know, it's like people are who they are, and you know, Jews are pretty prolific. That's why I let it sit. You know, I'm just trying to be one of them. I think
So
Mike,
Melissa and then Mike. Unmute, yeah.
I don't know if I necessarily wanted to say anything.
Okay.
I don't.
Cut her off.
I'm not really a musicals fan, so I didn't really like this film. But I thought the cinematography was great. I find musicals really, the music part really takes me out of a story in a way that doesn't work. But that's just a personal preference. So I definitely appreciate that there's a lot of people out there who like musicals, and I wanted to watch this one just to be part of the discussion and hear you all what you thought about it.
Why I looked to you was because these people are more in your demographic, and I was wondering if their feelings and their performances rang true with you.
It's a tricky question because once people start singing about it midway through, it stops ringing true to me. But it's when you take that part out, like everything that you're saying here in this discussion, I agree with, and I love the way Fern described the plot lines, and I really connected to that, but I didn't connect to how it was portrayed in the film because there was a lot of exposition coming through songs. So I mean, yeah, I definitely understand the feeling of having to be scrappy and having, you know, especially when you're in any line of work where it's more about passion than about having a real planned road. I think, you know, anybody who goes for a career that is in something like that is probably going to have a lot of dues paying and a lot of rejection and a lot of having to prove themselves in really hard times. So I certainly connect to that. And I think you can connect to that even if, you know, for me, the field was sport. So, you know, I think there's something to that. And I think there is a lot of that, you know, needing to be really focused on what you're doing, sometimes at the exclusion of the people around you. So all that did make sense to me if I sort of take the music out of it. Which you're not supposed to do. So I don't know what to tell you about my answer.
I would urge you to spend a little time with some Sondheim work like Into the Woods or Merrily We Roll Along. And it's like learning, it's an art form. It's like looking at a painting and saying, well, it's just a blob. If you don't study what it is, you may miss really what's the depths of it and what's going on. It's a way of expressing stuff in a different form, and the form itself has beauty. And Into the Woods is probably as good an example of great art in musical theaters as could be. I'm sorry, there are a few people here who I haven't been. Norman, your video is off, so if you're raising your hand, I can't see you. If you'd like to raise your hand and I'm not seeing you, if you go to at the bottom of your screen, it says reactions, and you can press raise my hand. I will see that. So why don't we start with Norman, and also Michelle wants to speak. There are two people who've been waiting, and then I think Michael wanted to speak as well.
And if Norman can hear this, just unmute yourself, the red icon at the lower left of your window. Click on that, and we'll be able to hear you if you don't want to be seen. Now you figure out how to do that and then speak up. Who's next, Fern?
Michelle.
Michelle.
Hi,
Hi, Michelle.
Hi. You know, I think what is really sticking with me so much is this great curiosity about, you know, tick, tick, boom. It's like there was an urgency the entire time. And I'm struck by the fact that he passed at such a young age. And I just wonder, you know, in our lives, like what, if there was something in him that just knew that he needed to go that fast. And obviously, you know, I get it. Like he kept comparing himself to other people who were younger than him, who already had this out. But it was just, it just brought up a lot of questions about our humanity and our, you know, what we are here to do or what we do in our life, and how he and then also how he passed the day before, I mean, right, like the day before it was going to come out. And it kind of blew my mind. So that's the thing that I think I'm really sitting with and almost framing, for better or for worse, almost everything, even including how he was with his significant other. And it was like he was like, I don't want to say possessed, because I don't know what that word actually means, but he was consumed with his work. And it's like, looking at it after his death, it makes it like seems clear in that sense. I don't know if that's really what was happening internally, but I just have found that very striking and meaningful on some level.
Let me ask you something, Michelle. Why do you think it is so hard for artists to gain real expression for themselves, if not to just get it out, but to get it heard or seen? Should it be as hard as it is?
That's an interesting question. It is very, I mean, it's so interesting. I just think there's so much at play, like so many cultural factors, it seems like, play into this, because I mean, obviously he was massively talented. So yeah, it seems like, yes, his voice should be heard. And it sounds like from his experience, at least what he said in what we saw tonight, that he was trying, he felt that he had something to contribute that was different than what was already out there. And his frustration that there seemed to be a mold that was accepted by Broadway, and that mold was what was being seen. And he felt he had an original voice. And clearly Michael felt that. So I don't know what the answer is to all of that. I almost feel like part of this is like a cultural phenomenon that we see, where it takes something to open the door for other people in certain ways.
In Terry Gross this morning, one of the interviews with Sondheim she replayed was, I think it was a very important song from Merrily We Roll Along, Fern, where it's the two, composer and the lyricist, are singing with a woman friend about how difficult it is. It's called Opening Doors. And in the middle of it, Jason Alexander plays a producer who steps in and says, well, you got to give people something they can hum and tap their feet to and sing when they're walking out the door. And when Stravinsky ever sells tickets, I'll let you know. You know, it's like that wry comment of the greats, didn't do well either. And Sondheim said that about himself. He got tremendous adulation from fans and critics and historians, but he said, my musicals never make any money.
There's also, if you're not familiar, William Finn wrote some extraordinary musicals, including one called March of the Falsettos and Falsetto Land.
Oh, yeah.
And these were about, it was about the AIDS epidemic, but it was seen through the eyes of a Jewish family. And it's funny and painful and extraordinary, and it's another wonderful avenue into musical theater. And I highly recommend his music is fabulous. Michael, did you still want to say something? Yeah.
No.
No? Okay.
Anybody else have welcome, Arla? Well, good to have you. Do you want to ask any questions? We don't bite. You can see that.
No, I don't have any questions. Just that for me, it was my first I'd heard of Rent, but I never saw it. And this was my first real exposure to Larson. And like the rest of you, I mean, it's already been said, but there was, I did also pick up on the fact that when he said parents saying Kaddish for their children, and that was my aha moment. And of course, at the end of the film, you see the clips of the real Larson, and at that point, you could kind of see I could see where he could be Jewish. And then, of course, when I Googled after the film, I saw that I can't remember if it was his grandfather or his great-grandfather, but apparently the original name was Lazaroff, which then was changed to Larson. But I also found it interesting that, except for that one comment about saying Kaddish and using that term, who else would, I don't think someone who wasn't Jewish would say saying Kaddish. They might say something like having to bury their children, but the use of the word was like the tip off. And I also wondered about it, how nothing else came out about his Jewishness. You know, maybe he was just very disconnected from his Jewishness. But I found that to be something that kind of stayed with me. And I also thought that Lin-Manuel did a great job with his directorship. You know, I just thought that was with his directing was. Well, I just thought overall the whole thing was really well done, and I think the scene that stayed with me the most was just that, you know, that beautiful rooftop piece of the song in capital T capital S, the song that he wrote for the main character, the one that Sondheim had said was missing. You know, how it transformed during the production from on Sunday afternoon from the singer, the actress singing it, and then was transformed to Susan on the roof. And I just found that to be the most beautiful song. So that really stayed with me.
Yeah, that's another example of how the dramatic exposition and momentum is carried through song, and it's advanced by it. It's, you know, the two women singing the same song becomes more meaningful on the rooftop. It's just a gorgeous moment, a really mythical moment for us. I think Norman Schwab, did you have something to say? No, not anymore.
Not anymore. Steve Greenberg, want to unmute?
Sure. Yeah. The only other thing I wanted to say was how much of this film was about, as a screenwriter, I appreciated that his struggle with writer's block and to overcome, particularly about that last song that he needed. And it reminded me of another film of a similar theme called Adaptation, about a screenwriter, Charlie Kaufman's struggle to write a script for The Orchid Thief. It was about Meryl Streep and Nick Cage playing the characters in the adaptation of that, and also amazingly inventive and funny, in a painful way.
And I mean, he had writer's block, he had relationship block too.
Right.
I mean, it's all interwoven. It was really lovely. I want to go back to something that Michelle brought up, is why it is so hard for artists of all kinds to find a forum to not only express themselves, but to support themselves and make a living. And I'm going to toss out one idea that I think about, and that is that our culture, I'm talking about American, I don't want to generalize beyond this country, you know, we're not really cool with expressing our own feelings. We like them candy coated. And you can't risk too much. You can't threaten the audience too much with self-exposition, with their self-exposition. You have to treat their reactions carefully and say things in a way they are comfortable hearing. And that's a huge impediment to art of any kind, because it's art comes out of the artist, you know, and that's the message for those of us who aren't artists, is to say, wow, that stimulated something in me. He made or she made me think about something in a new way. And that's the function of it. And as long as our commercial system of entertainment is so obsessed with ratings and numbers, you know, we are actually depriving people of material that's more intelligent and more thoughtful than they're capable of understanding. You know, there's a saying in show business, no one ever went broke underestimating the American audience's taste. Steve Greenberg probably knows who said that, Harry Cohn probably. And that's been a mantra that abides even in the most progressive of companies and progressive of producers and studio executives.
But Jim,
yes.
I don't think that artists in Europe generally got rich either, and they don't have the same entertainment industry ethos that we have. I don't think I think that the life of an artist is a struggle in general, because not just because of we're Americans, but worldwide, putting people's insides on the outside is risky. And
right, but it's medicine. I mean, that's why I program the films I program, is because I know there's stuff in them that will bring us out of ourselves and to new awareness of our own feelings. And you don't do that by just feeding them something that's comfortable. It takes conflict, it takes tension, it takes challenge.
But then the ordinary person doesn't want to pay for that.
Well, I think the ordinary person today, whoever that is not responsible for their own condition, because it's been too many years of this Philistine culture we have where it's not cool. My own father said to me, why don't you get married and stop all this movie nonsense, before I came to LA, to go to film school. I was livid, and it's like, sure, everybody has to earn a living, but I don't begrudge it, but there's a way to do it. And I think it's just unfortunate, especially in the film business and television. Televisions are getting better and better. I mean, some of these series are great, but they're long novels, and it's easier to accrue emotion across 8 hours than it is to do in 90 minutes or 2 hours. And there's something about film where you get this concentrated provocation of yourself in a really good film. I mean, we've seen it. Think of Song of Names that tore us all up, about the Christian buddy chasing his Jewish friend, over 40 years to find him as a Chassid. And there are any number of scenes that have just torn us up. And that's what you want film and art of any kind to do. When we finished watching this film, my wife was a puddle of tears, because she's a Broadway student and has performed in musicals and loves the art form. And I said, why are you crying? Because it's so beautiful? And she sobbed and she said, yes. So we need more of that. I mean, it's only, let me get a little bit political. Trump aroused deep emotions in people. I think they were the wrong kind. What he didn't arouse was that kind of soulful in many of his followers. I mean, some were, I don't know, I can't defend any of them, but the point is, being in a persuasive position, having the bully pulpit like an artist or a playwright does, gives you a lot of freedom, and you can use it or abuse it. And, the fear is, if you don't treat people nicely, if you push them too hard, you won't get accepted. Look at all the people now that we are so sensitive, like the comedian who just got censored for his language. Yeah. And Lenny Bruce went to jail, and I don't know if Carlin did either, but he has the 7 dirty words monologue. Lenny Bruce used the F word all the time and got arrested for it, but that because he was 10 years, 20 years before Carlin. So it's like you let the devil and the genie, you let the genie out of the box when you're an artist. And the genie does his work on people, and that's very dangerous, like you said. But I think it's just fascinating that many of us are like drawn to these, like moths to the flame, because they speak to us. Yet it's dangerous work, and if it's not seen as work, it's just seen as, oh, they spin this stuff out on their word processors easily.
We have a couple of people who'd like to speak. Brad and then Barbara.
Well, Jim, in a country like France, the arts are government subsidized. And even during the pandemic, the artists were individually subsidized, the out of work artists. We had nothing like that in this country. We can't even agree to fund Sesame Street. So,
right. We did the WPA,
and the fact that the arts are subsidized allows for more transgressive types of performances.
Yes, right. But remember, in our country during the Great Depression, there was the WPA and the Arts Administration that gave artists and writers jobs, and whether it was going out and documenting the Dust Bowl people, like Dorothea Lange did, the photographer, and there were muralists and sculptors and painters and playwrights. There is what is the musical about the censored playwright? Orson Welles was involved in this show. Maybe somebody will know it. It's during the Depression, and they shut down the show because it was too political. I mean, the Red Scare in the 50s also restored. It was a slap in the wrist to Hollywood. They say, the government said, you better play ball with us or we'll shut you down by depriving you of your stars. So the studios went along with it, and they blacklisted people when they legally they didn't have to. So that was a great reversal from the FDR 30s when everybody was subsidized. You know, we all tried to give people productive lives. Risa, I can see you leaning in to say something soon.
So Barbara next.
So I just want to say that someone like Sondheim, though, does have a very important place in our experience. And though he was very hard to listen to and very sarcastic and had a very odd way of looking at the world, he had a huge following. So it isn't all so bleak as I think we're describing. I think there's many places where we learn from these kinds of brilliant people who are out of the box. And Sondheim is a perfect example. And William Finn, as you talked about. So there are those examples where people do break through.
They do break through. I'm not saying they don't. It's just that should it be as uphill a battle as it is, as depicted in this, you know? Now, that be said, the Stalin was very tough on the artists as long as you please, you know, if you pleased him, it was fine. But if you went against social realism, you know, you were in jail or sent to Siberia, literally. Or, you know, Eisenstein almost wasn't admitted back in the country when he went to the US and Mexico to do an appropriately socialist documentary. And he had to beg to be, to return. And he went through a period of re-education. And then he became the top instructor in the Russian film school. So, you know, they slapped his wrist.
It is significant to note, however, in all of those actions against actors and so on, nobody was more persecuted than the Jews, either by the Soviets or by the Red Scare in the United States.
Well, you're right. The Jews, you know, were in the arts there as well. They were part of the intellectual class. And of course, that was anathema to an autocratic regime because you can't control them, you know. And the irony was that Stalin didn't even understand the stuff they were banning. You know, Hitler could claim it was not Aryan art, you know, but there was no explanation other than it wasn't Russian socialist realism was defined as the love of the tractor. And you see that in North Korean propaganda too, where it's all about the success of the state at bringing a better life to people. And it's propaganda. It's a barrage of one point of view. And there's not much truth to it. It wasn't under Stalin. There wasn't during our Red Scare. There isn't in North Korea. China today is the same thing. You know, they'll even shut down a tennis player who said he fooled around with me. You know, and then think of all the refuseniks in Russia and Sharansky and the others who fled because it was dangerous to be there. So it's not just artists, but danger has a cost to it, you know, and artists are brave. And I don't think we acknowledge that. And Brad, we don't celebrate our artists as much as France always did. Going back hundreds of years, they celebrated the artists, a point of national honor, you know.
That's true. I think Risa would like to say something. Reese?
I've been trying not to say it.
Oh, why?
That's when you should speak up.
Well, no, it's just interesting because my experience in the art world is not I love musicals. I loved this movie once I got over the confusion of the first beginnings where I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
But that straightened itself out and I figured it out that it was a one-man show. But what's been going through my mind is that everything you're saying or we're saying as a group reflects the life of a rabbi who stands on the pulpit and opens his soul in his sermons and then waits for the criticism of the congregation and then puts himself on the line moving around congregations with these search committees. And what the rabbis call it, which many search committees are not aware of, Fern, you've been through this, is that it's the slave market. They put themselves up before these committees and they're asked every personal and every thoughtful and deep question about their belief, and they have to open themselves up to what? To what? For what pay? And the children that you talked about, the children pay a price for being RKs, for being rabbis' kids. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's a different form. It's a different form of art. But the sermon has become so difficult that if you talk to younger rabbis, and I mean really younger, I'm talking about the kids who are just coming out of school in their 30s, they won't preach anymore, except on the high holidays. They teach from the pulpit, but they won't preach. The world is changing, and they don't open themselves up that way. And I think it's a shame. And the other thing is that my father, Alva Shalom, used to say, if a rabbi is liked by everybody in the pulpit, he isn't doing anything.
Right.
If you're not upsetting the people, you're not making people think. So it's the same thing from the stage. It's the same thing from the stage. So that's why I didn't want to speak, because that's what's going through my mind.
I'm glad you did. None of us will tell Stan about that, but
he's sitting right behind me.
Well, I think what you're saying is really anybody who makes a living by putting their insides on the outside and asking for other people to approve it and pay for it is going to be in a very tender, difficult position. You're muted, but I know what you said.
All right, I'm just saying it's the same as when you brought up Trump.
Okay, it's like, okay, let me interpret.
Politicians put themselves on the stage that way.
We know that.
But anyway.
But they're playing the audience. That's the art of being a politician, is to play the audience, not yourself, and give them what they want to hear in a way that fits in with your agenda. But I want to compare the preaching sermons and the performance arts. And that is, you are crucifying yourself, excuse the pun, for the benefit to demonstrate an emotion or an idea or a feeling so that other people will feel it. Maybe not agree entirely, but you'll give them a taste of something a territory they wouldn't have ordinarily trod upon. And it's education, it's soulfulness that we're trying to reach when we make movies and musicals and write books. They tell us about ourselves, and I think that's what Sondheim was so great at. All the little things that are involved with intimacy, how we hurt each other, how we love each other, ignore each other. He was remarkable at finding the words to express this in so many ways. He told us about ourselves and stuff we do without paying attention to it. And that's the role of the artist, to hold that mirror up to us in some way through different skills, different media. What?
No, when you're done, we have a few people want to speak. Sorry.
Oh, well, better to hear from them, because I could go on.
So we have Michelle and Melissa and Abby.
Unmute, there you go.
Yeah. Oh goodness, so much has been said. So there were two words that I kept in my head to kind of remember. One was trust, and I was thinking about that in terms of, do we really trust like our own creative process, or just do we trust almost like the human condition, or ourselves as humans? Because I feel like he was going through a process. He was presenting his process. He had to design, and artists, I think that's a lot of what they're doing, or they're reflecting on things, but it's like a process. It's to me, it feels like it's a moving target. And, this part of this may come from the line of work that I do. I mean, I'm a psychologist, I'm a therapist. And one of the things that I really resonate with is, can I help my client stay with it long enough to get to that next gem, that next opening, that next, you're boxed in, you're stuck. How do you trust the process? And I sometimes feel like in our culture, we have there isn't an understanding that maybe there's a way to trust the process, and that we will get to a place if we are open and expressive and say things. So that there's just a curiosity of mine around, different cultures' trust in the human condition, in the process, and what that means and what that looks like, and where the censorship happens and where the boxing happens. And so that was like one big thread. But the other big thread was like thinking about, well, why don't the thing about your insides being on the outside? And I was thinking about the creative process. And I know for myself, I have a really hard time putting myself out there, because whatever expression I put out there is very likely to change the moment I put it out there. Meaning I am not the same person once I express that piece of poetry, that whatever it is, I'm not the same anymore. That process of mine has now moved me into something else. And so I don't want to be static to whoever I do this with, because that's not me anymore. And I wonder how artists grapple with that, because for me, that's, I think, what holds me back the most out of anything. And I wonder, and I feel like, you know, that as a culture, we have moved, and I'm thinking of Beyonce, I don't know why but I feel like she's moved things forward. I feel like there are artists who are moving things really forward and putting their insides on the outside more and more and more, and almost making that the standard of like, express whatever you need to express. But I really wonder about the static part and the movement part. And if we are going to really respect artists and the process, how do we do that in a way where we don't hold people to what they did yesterday when they're now a different person? And if it's like that for everybody.
You know, I'd like to pay everybody a compliment that we're always changing every day if you have enough introspection. And we don't, in our culture, we don't see enough of that modeling of the trust you're talking about. Because you know, to trust means you're vulnerable. You know, the trust is the hope, the faith you put in somebody or something else to help you. And that's a vulnerability. That's why people are vulnerable to charlatans and propagandists who, you know, mislead them in one direction in order to get their votes. So, you know, people are, I don't want to say shy, they're hesitant to trust because we don't have a lot of demonstrations of that in our culture. But we do in the arts, because you can't do what, look at what these actors did. They actually have to trust the material so it lands properly on the audience. They have to believe in the material. And so they are allowing themselves to be vulnerable by exposing their confidence in the material or in the character they're creating, like an actor who has to portray an evil character. Many people derive great satisfaction from that because they can nuance it and humanize the bad guy instead of turning him into a clown or an easy, you know, antagonist. So I just think we're hesitant to give up, you know, that vulnerability. We, you know, this fiction of American exceptionalism and the rugged individual, you know, none of us could have existed on the prairie in 1810, you know, in a covered wagon, unless we had to, you know, and many Jewish immigrants had to, you know, come over on a boat and be seasick for 5 days and get their wallets stolen before they landed on Ellis Island. You know, in a way, I hate to sound like an arch conservative, we're soft, you know, but I'm saying we're soft because we're not vulnerable enough. And I'm not saying vulnerable like a snowflake, but we're not strong enough to allow ourselves to consider something outside of our comfort zone. That's another way of putting it. To try something new, a different way of feeling, a different way of thinking, and reflect, you know, and it's because we're basically insecure. And I lay it off on the role of public schools, but that's for another discussion. But thank you, Michelle. Those are, so the trust and the vulnerability go together for me, if that makes any sense, if I made any sense.
I'm going to, yes, Melissa, and then if Abby comes back, she had her hand up.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting question. I see it a little differently. I think there's more than one uphill battle for, let's just say, just the arts that we're talking about here. I think that I don't see a shortage of people who are willing to put their feelings and thoughts out there in a unique way. I don't see that shortage. I think that there's the uphill battle of your own personal internal creative process, but there's also the uphill battle of getting that process to be seen in a world that's so inundated with everybody putting their personal thoughts and feelings out there. I think technology has changed a lot in the last 10, 20 years. And with it, it's changed a lot of different industries. And so for some mediums of the arts, that's made it easier to create content. Not for all of them, but for some, it's made it easier for people to create content. And for many of us, it's created more ways to be putting our message out there, either the art itself or the promotion of it. So that means we're really saturated. And I see this all the time because I do small business marketing. So there are tons of freelancers and creatives who are trying to get people to see their work and appreciate their work, but it's getting bottlenecked because there's a lot of it out there for people to see. So we've gotten to this place where we're consuming it really quickly. As consumers, there's a lot to see. So unless something really hits us and makes us keep our attention there, we just move on to something else. So, you know, the ability for us as consumers to focus in on one person's message and lift that above everything else perhaps isn't what it was when we had fewer channels to consume all the arts that are out there. So I don't know. I think people are putting opinions out there and putting messages out there and putting a lot of themselves into it. And then they're fighting for it to get seen. And I think I saw that in this film too, because he had the process for trying to create in the writer's block. But then there was also a lot tied to who showed up when he showed his work to the public, and, you know, who was in that room. How was this agent going to get people there? Because he didn't know how to do it if not for that. So like, I think I still saw this in this film, even though his journey was some years back. We were still chronicling that even then.
Thank you. Jim, we have a few minutes left, and I wonder if Abby's not back. If she comes back, we'll call on her. If just make sure we have time to tell people when the next program is, and what, if you know what we're watching.
Originally, I had scheduled a film for 2 weeks from tonight. The date. I hadn't picked a film and haven't yet, but there is a film that is being shown at the Irma's campus, the Glazer campus, rather. I think it's on the rooftop of the new building. And if you've seen pictures of the new building, it's pretty stunning. And the film is about a Jewish dog who is taken from a Jewish family and given to the Nazis and is trained to be a concentration camp attack dog. And lo and behold, the boy who loved him so much as a puppy gets off a train, and there's the dog who recognizes him. It's directed by Lynn Roth, and she will be there, and I'll moderate a discussion with her, Q&A with the audience. It's outdoors, and it's Sunday afternoon. There'll be hot chocolate. We're trying to make it a kind of seasonal event, and Melissa, you're certainly welcome to come. Lynn Roth, by the way, did her first film was called The Little Traitor, about a Jewish boy in Palestine, pre-Israel, and he befriends a British officer who's occupying Jerusalem. And it's a touching film. This one will probably be more fun than that. I mean, she's a lot wiser now. Lynn has had a career in comedy television, did a lot of work, I think, for Fox, and so she'll be there. So dress warmly. It's Sunday the 12th, I think. Is that right? It's Sunday the 12th, December 12th?
Next week?
Yes, next week. A week from tomorrow at 4 p.m. They haven't promoted it yet on the website, but they will.
Okay.
And I haven't seen the film yet.
I just want to mention that's Alan Freeling's memorial then.
It's at 3 o'clock. His memorial is at 3 o'clock.
I'll remind Rabbi Nanis about that. And is the memorial live at university campus? Or?
No, I don't believe so.
Yeah, it's both.
It's both.
Okay. Well, I hope we don't lose too many people, but I thought.
Could I find out? I was Rabbi Freeling's secretary. I'd really like to go.
It's the 12th at 3 p.m. at the university campus. You have to register in advance to go there, and you can also join online.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So
are you still doing a film
on the 18th?
Film on the 18th?
I don't know if I will have the stamina for that. I'm still selecting, but I wanted some feedback from all of you. I think most people really enjoyed this, and I can go there with this kind of programming. I'm so glad we had this kind of discussion that drifted off the film into the arts and who we are as a people. This is really where I hope to take these discussions, outside the movies. So I will keep trying to do that as long as I see enough heads nodding. That
Are you talking about the movie The Power of the Dog?
No, that's the Jane Campion film that's out, which is supposed to be terrific.
But it's
And
not the one you're talking about.
No.
Oh, okay. No, I
This
just,
is
I don't know. I don't even know what that film was about. I just know the name.
Yeah, no, that's about two brothers, and one of them's kind of a cad. And
okay,
Jane Campion is a wonderful director. I think she's Australian, and her first film was called The Piano.
Oh yeah,
back in like '92. I just watched it again. It's very
I love it.
bizarre, but she's a really good director, really sensitive humanist, and that's a word I haven't used yet today. But I think that's what we're all talking about, whether you're a rabbi or a Broadway performer or a writer. It's humanism. It's what is the value of a human being? What do we all share? And
Excuse me, Jim.
this is
Abby has just come back, and I know she's been trying for some time to
Okay.
speak. Abby, do you want to say something? No.
Yeah.
Good.
Hi. So I just wanted to say that I really liked the music in the film, but the melodies and the words that were so narrative and so funny. And I thought that the plays that he created, what was it, Superbia and the Tick Tick Boom, which a lot of the play was part of the movie. I thought they were so interesting and nice. And I wish that Tick Tick Boom is done as a play again sometime.
maybe. Again. My point of view is that they did such a great job of transforming it into a movie because they took it out of the stage. It was all that one performance space you saw. Okay, so we were talking, thank you, Abby, and thanks for being here tonight. We'll see. There might be something on the 18th. That would be the night we do it. And I'll give you more than 3 days notice. As I did this week, life's been kind of hectic. I've been very busy, and I won't confess all my wanderings with you, but I've been very busy, and we'll keep going. But it would be great to see you all in person for a change, and please say hi when if you can come to that movie. I even forget the title. But it's nice to have the filmmaker for a Q&A because it fleshes out these discussions we have. And there'll be hot chocolate and cookies.
Where is it?
It's on Wilshire near Vermont in Koreatown. This is the main campus national landmark. And they've just put up a new, I think it's the social service building, Fern, is that correct?
No.
What is it?
No, they put up the Irmis Pavilion. It's going to be, it's really an event site, and
I see.
It's an extraordinary building. It was in Architectural Digest this past month, and you can see it there. It's really beautiful.
That's what's going to be on Sunday.
I assume it would be on the roof of Karsh Center, not the roof of that building.
I don't know.
I don't know.
No idea.
It's on a roof at the Glazer campus.
Yeah, that's
I think it's Shepherd, the story of a Jewish dog. Does that sound right?
Yes, that's right. That's what it is. The story of a Jewish dog.
Okay.
So you can look it up. You can see the trailer. You can read the synopses and Google it to decide if you want to come see it. I look forward to seeing you there. And if not there, maybe we'll get together on the 18th. We're not going to have a session on Christmas Day because we'll all be at Chinese restaurants. But if you want, there is a cute Christmas. It's called it's a Jewish Christmas film set in a Chinese restaurant. Jewish family goes out for Christmas dinner, and the entire staff, including the kitchen and the busboys and the dishwasher, sing songs written part of the American songbook from Broadway musicals, written by Jewish men.
What's the name of the movie?
It's not a white Christmas, it's a Jewish Christmas or something like
It's
that.
Christmas time for the Jews.
What's springtime for the Jews? No.
Christmas time.
Christmas time for the Jews.
No, it's
There is such a thing. You can Google it. It's extremely funny.
okay. It's a short film. It's around 20 minutes. It's delightful. And of course, all the singers and dancers are of color, or 90% of them, because that's who busboys and waiters and waitresses are. So in a way, it's like very knowing, but it's all in good, it's in fun. It's meant to be fun. And if you like Christmas songs, carols, you can sing along with them after you come home from your Chinese restaurant. And then I'm going to be out of town myself on New Year's Day. So it looks like January will be our, for certain, next screening. And I'm going to take a deep dive into some deep films. And we'll mix it up as we always do. But I wanted to prove to those of you who may have complained about the seriousness of all the films we see that I do have an understanding of movies are allowed to be fun, and that's certainly what drew me to them. So I can't ever
Even if it did end with him dying before his musical got out.
Yeah.
was
I
the
couldn't
case.
help that. That's the
I know.
chronology I couldn't
I
change.
know.
Okay. So
So
thanks
is
for
there-
participating.
Are you
It's a great
talking about,
discussion. Look forward to more.
Barbara, what
are
do
you
you
talking about, are you talking about January 8th, or you're just going to let people know when you're going to do it?
I'll let you know, but it probably will be the first Saturday in January. I know all of you will be skiing at Mammoth though, right? Okay.
Thank
See
you.
you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, whoever said that.
Thank you.